Circumference and area of a circle. We're going to start by reviewing what was in the first video. Number 1. If the radius is 12 feet, find the circumference and area. You'll recall that circumference is the distance around a circle, like the perimeter of a circle, and area is all the space inside a circle. The formula for circumference is 2 pi r or pi d, where r is radius and d is diameter. As we move through this video, keep in mind that you can pause it at any time or even rewind it if you need to see something again. Okay, so if we put 12 in for r, we get 2 times pi times 12, or 24 pi feet. If we want the decimal version of that, just use 3.14 or the pi button on your calculator, and we get 75.36 feet. How about the area? The formula for area is pi r squared, where r is radius once again. Let's substitute 12 for r. 12 squared is 144, so we get 144 pi feet squared for an exact value. Or if we use, once again, pi as 3.14, or we use the pi button on our calculators, we get the decimal approximation of 452.16 feet squared. Remember the relationship between diameter and radius. 2 times the radius is the diameter. So if the radius is 12 feet, that's from the center of the circle to any edge of the circle, or any part of the edge of the circle. The diameter is all the way across the circle from edge to edge through the center. You're going to take radius 12 and get a diameter of 24 feet. If the diameter is 24 feet, then of course the radius is 12 feet. Now let's move to some things that were not in the first video. Let's find the radius if we're given the circumference. It's kind of like going backwards. So let's say that the circumference is 16 pi centimeters. The first thing I'm going to do is substitute, instead of c, I'm going to write 2 pi r, which of course is the formula for circumference. That's over on the left side. 16 pi, I'm just going to leave it the same. Now we're trying to find r, we're trying to isolate the variable r. So we need to get rid of this 2 pi. We're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. And when we do that, we've got 2 pi divided by 2 pi, which is 1, so those are gone. And over here, pi divided by pi is 1. So we're left with r equals 16 over 2, which is 8. Now, if the problem asks for the diameter, that would just be doubling 8, which is 16 centimeters. Let's try another one where we're given a decimal approximation instead of an exact value with pi. Circumference equals 65.94 centimeters. So I still replace c with 2 pi r, and I still divide both sides by 2 pi. Over here, on the left side, 2 pi divided by 2 pi is still 1, so it's gone. We're left with r. And over here, when I don't have a pi over here now to simplify with this pi, so I'm going to just divide this on my calculator, but make sure now that you have parentheses around 2 pi. If you don't, the calculator will divide by 2 and multiply the whole thing by pi. We get 10.4947, etc., so I rounded that to 10.5 centimeters for the radius. Once again, remember to pause the video anytime you need to, or rewind it as needed as well. Now we're going to move on to part 3. How do we find the radius if we're given the area? Well, in this problem, I'm given area equals 9 pi meters squared. What I do first is I replace area with pi r squared. That's the formula for area. Then I'm going to divide both sides by pi. When I divide both sides by pi, I'm left with r squared on the left side and 9 on the right side. R squared equals 9. So that means that r is the square root of 9. I don't worry about plus and minus. I just need the positive value because it's the radius. And then r equals 3 meters. Notice area was meters squared for the label. Radius is just going to be meters. 9 pi was an exact value. Let's say we're given a decimal value problem. Let's try it again. area equals 50.24 inches squared. I start by replacing the a with pi r squared. I divide both sides by pi, so the pi's are going to simplify to 1. I'm left with r squared equals, and I just use my calculator. You can divide by pi or 3.14, and I got 16 when I used the pi button on my calculator. Or maybe I used 3.14. I can't remember, but it's about 16. And then we have r equals the square root of 16, so r equals 4 inches. Now, let's think about some extension problems. If you know the circumference and want the area, how are we going to do that? Well, you would first find the radius, so find the radius first, follow example 2, and then once you have the radius, you can get the area by using pi r squared. What if you know the area and you want the circumference? Once again, find radius first. This would be using example 3. And then once you have the radius, you can use 2 pi r to get the circumference. So I'm not going to give you an example of this because it's putting together the different examples and applying those in a new situation. And then let's look at an application problem. How much fencing should Jasmine use around her pond if the diameter of the pond is 20 yards? How much would this cost if fencing is $22 per yard? Circumference is the amount of, it's the distance around a circle. So if we're going around her pond, we're assuming this is circular, then we would want to use 2 pi r, or you learned in that first video, you could use pi d because d is just 2 times r. So we multiply pi times 20. And since it's a word problem, it makes sense to get decimal approximations. And I get about 62.8 yards. We know that the fencing cost $22 per yard. And since there's 62.8 yards, I multiply that by 22, and I get $1,381.60. Please review this video as needed, and these notes are also posted on Canvas for you to refer back to.